know that character in action movies that stands there silently, ominously, while everyone fights around him, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash his supreme and devastating skills on his opponents? In poker, that's Anthony Gregg. His quiet and professional demeanor might not be the stuff that compels fans, but his skill is the stuff that professionals fear. So what makes him so talented? Let's break it down. The hand begins with Chris raising ace-5 on the cutoff and Anthony calling on the button with jacks. I think in some cases, Anthony would re-raise here with the intention of 5-betting against a 4-bet, but I think he elected to call here in hopes of inducing a shorter stacked Larry Sharp to shove from the small blind. Larry decides to do no such thing with 10 high, and we see a heads-up flop between Anthony and Chris. The 4-4-5 flop looks pretty good to both players. Chris bets and Anthony calls. The turn is the 6 of hearts, bringing a flush draw. Chris knows there's not much value to be had by betting, so he checks and decides to call the 1/3 pot bet from Anthony. When the river completes the backdoor flush draw with the king of hearts, things get interesting. Chris checks and Anthony fires a value bet of $500,000 into a pot of $1.1 million. Chris comes to the conclusion that his hand is almost never good, but also correctly reads that Anthony is likely betting a medium straight hand. He knows there's very few hands Anthony would call with pre-flop that contain a 4, and that pocket 5s are less likely with his holding one of those 5s. He also knows that Anthony can't have the nut flush because he's holding the ace of hearts himself, meaning he has 2 blockers to some of the strongest potential hands in Anthony's range. When Chris puts all these pieces together, he decides to make a daring play and check raise to $1.4 million.
1.4?
It's a strong play, and the smaller raise size is even selected to make it look as though he's trying to get value. Now it's Anthony's turn to think things over. He knows Chris's value range for this river check raise is comprised of flushes and full houses. He likely believes that Chris would elect to bet on the turn with most flush draws instead of check call, making those holdings improbable. He also likely believes that Chris would bet pocket kings on the turn, and that he would sometimes still bet the turn when he already had a boat, like 5s or 6s full. As a result, the only holdings Anthony thinks Chris might have are pocket 5s or pocket 6s that took an unusual line. In the end, Anthony decides it's more likely a capable player like Chris is bluffing than going for value in a strange way.
Cool.
So he makes the call and discovers he's won the pot.
What a play by Anthony Gregg right there to make that call with 2 jacks.
And as much as he wanted to maintain the professional facade he wears at the table, he just couldn't help but smile about that one.